Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Todd Clint's SharePoint Podcast, lucky number 343, recorded live Monday, June 26th, 2017. I am back, your rightful host, Todd Clint, back where I ought to be, back where I'm supposed to be. And sitting next to me over there is that other guy, Shane. Tell him, they don't care, but tell him who you are anyway.
I believe that Twitter asked if Todd was going to join Shane's show today. I believe Twitter has rebranded the show already to the Shane Young Show. So I don't know what to tell you.
Do I need to go through all the times and the list of things where Twitter's been wrong? Because I can do that. I can.
I honestly don't think you could, right? I think if you sat down and said, today I'm going to list everything that's been wrong on Twitter, I don't think you'd finish.
Twitter is above reproach. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think Twitter is so bad that you could never keep up.
So anyway, I'm back. We're going to talk about that in the topics of the show. But yes, after 2 weeks of being gone, I am back. And I kind of got a bit of a cold. I'm trying to power through it. I'm drinking warm liquids and all that. But there was no way I was going to give this Joker 3 shows in a row. So I'm powering through it. But if you need to talk to me, if you need to reach out to me and tell me how much you missed me on the show, you can hit me up on Twitter at Todd Clint. You can email me, todd@toddclint.com. Smoke Signals, Instagram. I'm Todd Clint everywhere. Shane, tell the good folks how to reach out to you.
Oh, don't forget Snapchat. I always like to hit you up on the old Snapchat.
Nothing good has ever come to me on Snapchat. Let's be crystal clear about that.
True story. So you can hit me up on Twitter at Shane's Cows, or hit me up with the bold zebra folks, which you probably can't see because Todd never gets the zooming right. But
I did. It's in there. You started crying about that like a month ago, and it's in there.
I mean, bold zebras, they do so much for our show, right? I mean, there's all the bolding, there's all the zebraing.
They're every week our executive sponsor, our commercial sponsor. They couldn't do it without them.
I know. It's so yeah. Hit me up there. Need anything? Let's see. What am I doing this week? We got SharePoint consulting, PowerShell consulting, Power BI consulting. Now I was doing some layouts in CSS earlier. We'll talk about that a little bit. I mean, it's all there. Come see me.
Shane doesn't even know what CSS is. Let's.
Probably don't.
So for production notes, we are super behind. I was gone for 2 weeks, though that's not true. I wasn't gone for the entire 2 weeks. I did spend roughly 18 hours in my house last weekend. So why I didn't use some of that 18 hours and sleep less and produce podcasts more, I have no excuse. But yeah.
If you'd hire that intern, though, we could just make them do it all.
I should do that. I tweeted, or I Facebooked yesterday. I've got a check-in for my house, mostly for jokes. And I checked into my house, and I'm like, I remember this place. I spent a night here a week ago. Kind of noisy, but otherwise not too bad. That's kind of how I feel. I feel like a visitor here. It's been a crazy couple of weeks.
Now, when you got home, did you ask the kids if Uncle Bob or Uncle Steve had come over lately? Any of that type of stuff?
Has Mommy had any uncles come over? No, I'm not. I'm afraid to have. No.
That's true. I don't ask questions you don't want answers to.
No, don't do that. But I've almost got 340. This is 343. I've almost got 341 finished. That should be up probably today, depending on how long this takes. And I'll knock 342 out pretty quickly so we can get caught up. Because I know you're all just jonesing for more podcasts, even though they are just Shane. I mean, I get that. So we'll get those out as quick as we can.
All right. So
go ahead.
I was going to say, jump in. Let's just hear about these travels. I can't even keep up with where you were. I just assumed it was prison. But where are you telling these fine folks you were?
It's jail if it's short term. Let's get it. It's prison if it's long term. It's jail if it's short term.
I'm glad you were here to clarify that for me.
2 weeks is only jail. That's at least that's what my lawyer says. I've probably said too much already. So, God, it's been so long. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Chicago.
Okay.
We were doing kind of a family vacation, and so I was in Chicago. The internet when we travel, because we've got a whole bunch of us. There's the 3 kids and my wife and I, and then we normally take one of our nieces or somebody to help watch the kids while we're gone. So there's 6 of us. and getting a hotel room or something for 6 people gets pretty crazy expensive. So we always do home away or Airbnb or something like that. And so we had this awesome Airbnb, like brownstone on the north end of Michigan Avenue. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Chicago, but it was right at the north end of Michigan Avenue where Michigan and Lakeshore kind of meet up. So it's right by all the fun stuff on Michigan. Great location. It was walking distance to Giordano's, which is something I always figure out when we stay someplace is, can I walk? So this is within walking distance to the one on Rush. So it was a pretty nice place. They had a big TV, had a 70-inch TV on the wall, instructions for how to use all the home entertainment stuff that had no bearing on the actual equipment that were in the house that we were at.
Nice.
It made references to remotes that simply didn't exist within the confines of that house. And I walk in, and there is, as I come looking around, there's one of the Apple wireless access points. What are those called? Airport Extremes or whatever. And it's sitting right there, and I'm like, sweet. These people spent like $1,000 on a wireless access point. The wireless here is going to be awesome. But of course, this book, which clearly was not for the house that we were in or not for this house this century, referenced a different wireless access point that was terrible. And it must have been like 4 blocks away. And so the wireless was terrible and it was slow. So I was going to try to crash the show 2 weeks ago, but I couldn't have probably even eked out the email telling you I was going to crash the show, let alone actually crashing the show.
That's I mean, there's nothing worse, right, than being trapped somewhere with terrible internet access. It's ungodly. It's a form of torture.
Yeah, and I've got a MiFi. I've got a wireless hotspot, and so I was using that, but we were getting close to our limit, and that was still not great because you got now 3 hops. You got all this, and that's the only thing that kept me sane was being able to use that thing. But I don't know how yours was back in the day. But mine, the wireless on it's pretty crappy. Like you got to be 10 or 15 feet away from it or less. And so like I would use it, but then Jill would want to use it or the niece would want to use it. We'd all have to be, sitting on each other's laps if we all wanted to use it. So that was pretty wild. So that's where we were and did a lot of fun things there. Went to the aquarium, went to the museums, took the kids up to the top of the John Hancock building, walked all. It was a good time. Good little thing. Ate Giordano's a bunch of times, and then Thursday we drove over to Michigan, and that was kind of the impetus for the whole trip. One of our former nannies was getting married in St. Joseph, Michigan, so we went over there, and so there were 2 fun things with that. Number one, Jill had never been to Indiana, so she got her first glimpse of Indiana driving through sunny and beautiful Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, hope you didn't stop. Hope you just drove straight through.
Oh, Lord, no. And then I got to go to Michigan. I'd never been to Michigan before, so I don't count. I've gone to the Detroit airport about 172 times, but I don't count that because I've never left the airport. So I got to go to Michigan. But yeah, as we're driving through the interstate from Chicago, through Indiana, it was not. I'm like, kids, don't make eye contact. Stay low. Stay behind the beams in the car.
Yeah, Gary, it's a little rough, and it's very, but the scenic cornfields you got to show her, I'm sure that felt like A, at home, but B, was representative of the whole state. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, it was terrifying. And then we were in Michigan. We're like, man, is there any way we can get home without driving through Indiana? Like, is there any route?
Go down.
So right before we leave, we on the Michigan side of the line, we gas up so we don't have to stop for gas. We're like, all right, kids, everybody go because we're not stopping this car. So then spent some time in St. Joseph, Michigan for the wedding and all that. It was very fun. And then Father's Day, we drove home. So Father's Day, I spent the entirety of Sunday, Father's Day, trapped in a car with my kids, which seemed more like punishment than celebration.
Yeah, Father's Day is never really about us fathers. I don't even know why we even pretend. It's always torture of some sort or another.
Yeah. So we drove home, didn't get mugged or window shot out in Indiana, so we're counting that as a win. And then Monday morning, got up and flew to Europe. And was at the Office 365 Engage event there. So that was put on by our friends at Petri. You do a bunch of writing for those. It's all those folks. So it was that stable of authors and all that. And that was in Haarlem, Netherlands. So it's kind of just right outside of Amsterdam. It's like a 20-minute drive outside of Amsterdam. Had a blast there. Had a good time. Good conference. It was a smaller conference. SP TechCon sized conference, so a smaller one. And it was in like this old European auditorium thing, the Philharmonie, or I don't know how the hell you pronounce that. But when I did my talks, the room I was in, it was literally like a stage in an auditorium with the plush seats and the balconies and all that. It was
fancy.
And when I came on, I came on from backstage because it just happened. The speaker room just happened to be off of that, so I just kind of walked in like I owned the place, and it was. It was a good time. A good event, lots of good speakers, lots of good attendees, really, friendly folks. I did the talk on Azure Active Directory, so getting domains hooked up in Azure Active Directory, getting replicated over to Azure Active Directory, some of the crazy bad things we've done.
And so how'd that go, right? Because you said the interface changed for that again here a couple weeks ago. So did it totally get you, or what did you find hours through?
No, I got it. And so... I've been doing that talk for, a couple of years now. Yeah. And the last time I think you and I did that deck, there were slides from different iterations of things. And some of our eagle-eyed students would notice that the domain in Office 365 would change depending on where the screenshot was. So I flushed and filled, started from scratch, started with an empty PowerPoint deck and went all the way through. And they moved a couple of things around, but it wasn't too bad. And I don't know when they made this change, but back in the day, when you wanted to set up the domain sync, that was in the users tab. Now that's in settings, domains, or something. It's in a different spot. All the same tools are there. You just have to know where to find them. But I've got the actual links, so you don't have to find them in the Office 365 interface. But that went pretty well. Got some good feedback on that. The other thing that was good about that was Andy Malone. He is, I think he used to be a SharePoint MVP. Now he's security or something else. He's a guy from the UK. He was doing like an advanced thing on Azure Active Directory. So we got that set up where I did mine Wednesday morning, and then he kind of did the part 2 on Thursday morning and showed how to get in and manipulate things and FIM and all that.
Did he start off his talk by, please ignore everything you learned in the morning session, starting over?
So that's a very valid question. I think had he made himself suffer through my session, that would have been his feedback, but he wisely stayed as far away from it as he could. And so that way there were no hurt feelings, no eyeballs were clawed out, no screaming, no, and running out of the room, none of that.
Gotcha. I think some of our PowerShell gurus on the Slack channel here, they just don't watch my PowerShell videos anymore. It makes their lives a lot better.
Yeah, their blood pressure goes down, their AFib doesn't kick in as much. But he and I did go over our decks together just to make sure that we knew where one, if there was any overlap, and it worked out really well because there were definitely topics that people asked me about in mine that I was like, I could tell you about it, but Andy's smarter than me and he's going to tell you about it tomorrow, so be here tomorrow morning at 9:45. That worked out pretty well. And then when I did sit through his session, I learned a bunch of stuff, and I can't wait to play with it some more.
So are we going to just steal his content now? And so we'll have a part 2 to our deck, which will look a lot like his.
That's not a horrible idea, honestly. That's
it's how the world works, right?
And it's funny because I started with an empty deck. PowerPoint, file new, and I was going through, and there were a couple of slides that we had in our deck where we had taken stuff from Microsoft decks. Mm-hmm. And I was like, so I kept one of them and I rejiggered it. It was the one that had going left to right. It had the different sources, and then it had the user and AD sync in the middle, and then it had all the stuff on the right that you could hook up with Box and Dropbox.
Yeah.
Okay. So I kept that one, moved some things around, changed some things. But then we had another one that had ovals and all that was right after that. And I was looking at that one. I'm like, I can probably tell that story in the previous slide. So I left that one out. Andy used that one. So I'm really glad that I left that one out so we both didn't have the same slide. Yeah.
Did you put Rocket Man back in?
Rocket Man is in there, absolutely. I referred to him as, per his full name, Rocket Man. He,
And did you make fun of your own Visios for me, or did the students get cheated out of that part because I wasn't there?
So I did mention, that people take it for granted that when I'm on stage, I seem very smart and cool and confident, but in reality, a Visio is a struggle for me. It's like, trying to do things with my left hand or something that just doesn't work very well. And so I'm telling them the story in those, and I'm like, did you guys know that you can control which end of the line the arrow's on? Like that's new. Like they just added that to the last version of Visio. I am positive that didn't exist 3 months ago. So then in that same slide deck, I'm walking through the process of syncing users and all that, and there's like a million screenshots, and I didn't want to have a million slides, so I was doing animations, and I swear to God, one of my slides that had the most pictures on it, there was like 7 images on it, I messed up the Z order, so the second image stayed on top for all of them. So had the first image, and then the second image, and then all the rest of them just piled up behind it. I'm like, son of a... Oh,
That's what you get for trying to be fancy.
God bless. So I need to go in and fix that slide. But other than that, I think it went pretty well. So, but yeah, it went really well. And again, going through the new interface, kind of learned where some things are at. So I've threatened you a bunch of times with making that into a video for YouTube. I was gonna do it this time when I was in Chicago doing these slides. But I was on my laptop as opposed to my big rig here, and I could not get Snagit to record video. And I didn't have Camtasia installed, and I couldn't download Camtasia because that thing's like, 75 meg. That had taken 6 weeks on that internet connection. So I did not do that. But I've got it all mapped out now, so we're going to do that this week. I got big plans. I got big plans for that.
If there was someone taking odds on this getting done by the end of the week, I would just be laying it all down and be like, look, here's all my YouTube money. Just put it on pod, not getting it done.
You have that at the ready anytime you're going to talk to me, don't you?
I do. Oh, and speaking of that, nope. Found number 4. That last time that I threw it all, I literally have been looking for this one for, what is that, a month ago? He's been in hiding.
Oh, my. So that talk went really well, and a bunch of people had good questions. I mean, it was definitely something that people were thinking about and talking about.
Yep.
So that was a good one. And then the second one I did was PowerShell, and PowerShell with Office 365. Same deal with that. A lot of questions, a lot of people doing things with that. That worked out pretty well.
Oh yeah, that's that one where I gave you all the notes and said, here you go, just do this stuff. That one?
That's the one. So it was interesting. There were a bunch of sessions. Tony Redmond, he's an Exchange guy. He was the guy trying to set all this up. And when we, months ago when we got this all, I felt like such a diva. Oh my God. And if any of you know Tony Redmond, he is one of those people that in person, really nice guy. Okay, decent guy. But online and in email, he's Scottish and he is terse. He is to the point. He is... So because of the wedding and the flights and all that, I came in I landed at 8 o'clock in the morning the day the conference started. And I just never know what kind of shape I'm going to be in when I land. So I tried real hard not to get any sessions that day. So I felt like Van Halen with my list of things. I can't have any sessions on the first day. I have these sessions, and they should be in this order, and they should be before this guy's session and after this guy's session. So we tried to coordinate all this thing with all my unreasonable demands. And Tony, he was reasonable about it, but he called my BS when it deserved to be called. But so we got the thing with Andy, we got that working out. I had part 1, he had part 2. I did my session, Office 365 with PowerShell, at the same time as a session, SharePoint Online with PowerShell. Exactly at the same time. And so I got the thing when I got there Tuesday morning. I showed it to Tony. I'm like, I realize it's probably too late, but I'm just saying something. He's like, it is what it is. Don't worry about it. So I don't know and that was 2 people that I didn't know, Juan Carlos, somebody, and Gustavo, somebody, I forget, people I hadn't met, and I didn't know what they talked about. But this conference did record all the sessions, so hopefully people who wisely chose to come to mine will be able to watch the other one, pick up anything.
That's pretty cool, though. At least Tony tried to work with you and your blue towels and, only green flowers type of demands. So,
yeah. And again, Tony is a big personality. Back, 100 years ago when I was an Exchange admin, Tony was the man. And again, he's not afraid to call a spade. And like every time something comes, I'm like, oh crap, I got to email Tony again. Oh, Jesus. He is going to scream at me. And he set up an Office 365 a tenant for us to upload our slide decks to and all that kind of stuff. And of course I didn't have them there on time because who does that? And so I got them done and I went to upload them and I couldn't get logged in. And we had a phone call like 2 weeks ahead of that when he was talking about it and I'd forgotten. So I had to send him an email and I'm like, Tony, I am terrible. You were very smart. Please help me get my stuff turned in.
Oh, good. Well, at least you didn't get punched or anything, so,
Not by Tony, no. So that was good. So then I did that session. I did the PowerShell session. The folks from Collab 365, they do some of these online events. They were there. So Andy Talbot and I, we sat in some bean bags. We did some interviewing, and that was a fun time. I definitely enjoyed that. And this had a fun thing that has never happened before. And so again, Andy and I, this was again very, very laid back. We were in beanbag chairs and all that, and Andy's just kind of a joker, and we're having fun, and we're doing this interview, and I keep making, as I always do when I'm talking about making things simple or whatever, I always use my mom as the example. And however the Collab 365 folks were marketing this, it was on Facebook, and I was tagged, and my mom happened to be in front of her computer, and she was watching it. So I'm sitting there, and so I'm being interviewed by Andy. And this guy, Fraser, he's kind of doing some of the tech stuff. And then another guy, Mark Jones, was somewhere, talking to the people who were watching the thing live. And my mom starts chatting with these people. She's like, "Hi, I'm Todd's mom."
Oh, gosh.
So we're in the middle of this thing, and Fraser gets a piece of paper. He's like looking around. He gets a piece of paper. He sees him scribble up. He holds up his sign. "Be careful, your mom is watching." And so these guys are all kind of crazy. And I'm like, I don't know if I believe him or not. He could be yanking my chain, but it was real. So I had to make sure that I didn't say. Not that I was saying anything disrespectful, but.
Yeah, I definitely saw your mom talking about it on the old Facebook, right? Because her and I, we chat on there.
Yeah, you and Mary are tight, way tight. Oh yeah. It was. I've never had that happen while I was. Oh, that was hysterical.
Yeah, it's moms always appreciate being included in our spiels. They're not like our wives who hate the fact that we do the things we do, or at least my wife. I think our moms enjoy the attention.
That phrase is so correct in so many aspects of my life. My wife hating the things that I do. That's just.
Yeah. Well, so you made it back from Harlem, and like you said, right down the road from Amsterdam. So I'm guessing, this is the time I'm going to tell you the random drug test is going to happen, right? The random.
Oh, yeah.
So the knock at the door, just give the man the sample he needs and move on.
Yeah. I'm sure those things exist in in Harlem, but I didn't see any. I didn't.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was complaining about jet lag, and somebody on Facebook's like, they have a lot of doctors there in the Netherlands. You can tell their storefronts are the ones that have the red lights. So just if you need help with something, just go stop by there.
Nice.
Very helpful. Very helpful. So did that. Had a lot of fun again, and it's as with any of these conferences. It's like a family reunion. It's Andrew Connell was there, Matt McDermott was there. Just everybody. Jared Shockley was there. I can't even begin. I'm forgetting people, and I feel horrible about it. It was a good time.
Very awesome.
So what did you do while
besides host this darn show for you 2 weeks in a row? Do you know the demands that it takes to get the show out the door every week? It's pretty rough.
Yeah, almost as much work as it is to produce it after you do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but producing can be done by anyone, right? That's intern work. But being the on-air talent, that was a little work. So no, other than that, let's see, what else did I do? Did some fun with PowerShell, and I guess we should mention for the viewers that Erwin tweeted today that the June Patterns and Practices PowerShell has some CSOM libraries out of whack. Oops. So make sure you update. I guess they pushed a new release today, so Go ahead and get that updated if you're doing CSOM-y stuff.
Yeah, I saw that. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things with the PnP, right? It's growing faster, right? It's getting a lot more attention, a lot more contributors. It's been a little goofier lately, so especially some of the commandlets. Now they went back and tried to add consistency. So it used to say, server URL, and now it says server relative URL, but it's like import export for SharePoint. The add command uses server relative URL, but the copy command uses server URL. A bunch of that type of stuff is now kind of starting to plague the product. I'm sure they'll work it all out, but it just makes me go, ah!
And they can add aliases, so even if they mess it up, in the code they can fix that.
Yeah, and the one that they changed, they did add the alias. That's what tells you not to use that one anymore. But the other one tells you that I don't know what you mean by that URL. So there's that. I've spent the last few days, other than I went to my in-laws, we'll save everyone that boring trip, but I've been playing with branding, right? Because what good PowerShell infrastructure, Power BI, Bold Zebra admin doesn't also do page layouts in SharePoint Online.
I didn't know you could do much with branding.
Yeah, so it's I haven't done anything with master pages, right? I'm hopefully not going to, but I've been playing with. So the customer wants to recreate like this 90-page flyer that they hand out to parents and stuff. And they want to recreate that as a whole bunch of pages on SharePoint Online. And so what we're trying anyway, I don't know if we'll go with this as the final solution, but we're using an enterprise wiki to recreate each page. But then he's like, well, it's not pretty over here, right? I need some stuff over here. So I'm like, yeah, all right. So I busted open Design Manager, and with Design Manager, you can create page layouts just like we used to. And so, but now what you do, it creates the page layout for you. You download this HTML file. You edit raw encoded HTML. It's nasty stuff.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. So then you push that back to the master library, then you publish it, and then when you publish it, it generates its own ASPX page. So it takes this encoded HTML page, doesn't use it, just uses that as the basis to write its own ASPX page that you then use as a page layout. So I kid you not, I looked earlier this afternoon, I've been through 70 iterations, right? Because the library's versions. I said how many versions I have. And you can do what you want to do, but it's nasty.
So isn't that how 2010 or 2013 did it? That story sounds very familiar. Tweaking a file and uploading it, and it generates the.
Yeah. So this is all, as best I can tell, it's exactly the same as 2013 was. Thankfully, I never had to do it in 2013.
Right. You had people for that. Yeah.
Exactly. But so in that part, I mean, it works. It's just the last time I truly had to do this stuff, I think, was 2007. It was either 7 or 10, but you could still use SharePoint Designer to kind of open up the page and kind of drag and drop and move things around. Yeah. And so with this one, nope, it is use your favorite HTML editor. For me, it's Notepad, and go in and write it. So it's been really, really interesting. The other tough thing is, since I've done this stuff, CSS has iterated, 17 times, sure. Probably more than that. So I was trying to make, I used to just make tables, right? I'd be like, all right, declare my table row, table column, boom, 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 boom. No, I had to create a div, and I have to create 2 other divs. I need to set the widths, the percentages, and make sure that I float. I spent a couple hours learning a bunch of crazy stuff that I don't know. It was nasty. But I got through it mostly, and page is looking pretty cool. And I do want to give a shout out to another SharePoint MVP. I think he's from Bauer. I don't know how you'd say his last name. Yeah. But he's at STF Bauer, Bauer on Twitter. So he helped me out with. I was trying to hard code some text into the page layout, which is way trickier than I would have expected. Also, so I could kind of I have web parts, and then I want to have some header text that goes with it. Not that you can edit; it's just there to kind of tell you what those web parts do. I don't know. I do not want to be a branding guy, but man, I learned a lot the last few days.
Yeah, Stefan, he's from Austria.
Yeah.
So how do you put the text in? Is there a way you can explain that in 30 seconds or less?
So the first way he had me doing it with the page rating control was he actually created a CSS class. You have to go so you have to publish everything, then figure out what SharePoint generates the ID for that web part as. And so then I went and created CSS that had a before tag that said, so essentially before you render that control, do this, and I was able to put the text in there.
Gotcha.
But then it turns out I also finally figured out there's a page control that I can embed in if I don't need it perfectly in line. And so I can kind of stack it div for the web part, div for page control where I can just type text. And then, I don't know. I don't want to explain it to anyone because I'm certain I'm wrong, but it's working for what I want right now. So
if it works, how can it be wrong? That's wise words from George Costanza. So I was thinking when you were talking about the PnP stuff, I was when I did my PowerShell session, I asked how many of you are using the PnP, I bet a third of the room knew what it was, which not enough, should have been all of the room, but far greater than I expected. So that was good.
Yeah, well, I mean, because you just have to, right? I mean, you literally can't do anything in SharePoint Online unless you go with PnP commandlets. So,
no.
Yeah, step 1, get assigned job to do something in PowerShell SharePoint Online. Step 2, go to Microsoft's thing. Go, this doesn't do anything. Step 3, find the PnP. It's just.
Yeah, and so and completely off topic now. So the guy that asked me in my class, it was about, I think he was trying. So I guess you and I were talking about this before the show. Somebody in my class wanted to upload like 300,000 files to a SharePoint Online document library, and none of the tools would let him do it because of views and thresholds and limits and all that. So he was, asking if PowerShell can do it. So anytime anybody says, "Can PowerShell do blah?" Yes.
Of course.
So then he asked how. Fair question. And so I said, well, probably before we get to the how, we need to talk about the why. Like, is there any way you can not have 300,000, items in this list? And we talked about that a little bit. But there's the add PnP file commandlet that I think is probably going to get in there. I haven't added 300,000 files to a document library with that, but I would assume that's how you would do it. But that reminded me of another limiting bug that I think is funny. Mark Anderson blogged this a few months ago. It is impossible to delete a document library in SharePoint Online if it has more than 99,993 items in it.
Oh.
You can't delete the document library if it has that. It is awesome. So Mark, of course, did a bunch of investigating. So it turns out there is some threshold in Office 365 in the background somewhere that says you can't delete a document library if it has over 100,000 items. And there are 7 hidden items, views, and stuff in the document library. So that gets you down to the 99,993 limit. And so what he ended up having to do was he connected Access to it, like Access on-prem, connected to a SharePoint Online document library, and he was able to delete items that way until he got below the threshold and then delete the document library. But then when in the comments of that blog post, and I think in the blog post itself, he mentions somebody said, use PowerShell to iterate through and all that. In the chat room, Mark Chrisman says he used WebDAV and Robocopy for tons of file shares to put files into SharePoint Online. So, yeah, I would probably do it too.
Yeah, I definitely, so much, we talked about before the show, but I think, essentially I've made videos that have all these pieces, right? So add PnP file, you're absolutely right, would be the way to upload them. Yeah. And so, but then there's a separate video that says, here's how you go and work with a file on a file system. So, because you just need to get the file, get the metadata properties for it, shove it up there, and then you go and use set list item, right? Because files become list items, which is very awkward. And then you can just rewrite the metadata as you go. So, right, because you'd want to update the modified date, the create date, that type of stuff. Yeah. The other thing that was getting me with that the other day, though, I sometimes forget about, right? But SharePoint works in UTC. So I was pushing things up and setting the time, and then it would be wrong. And I'm like, what in the heck? And I was like, wait, it's always off by 4. What does that mean?
That sounds familiar. I can't quite put my finger on it.
So that's so I called that out also, right? It's a whole, you got to be thinking about UTC when you're pushing things up there, and either formatting the dates or formatting them with post haste. So
yeah, we should do that video. That sounds like a fun video.
Yeah,
do that right after my Azure AD one.
Yeah, we'll see which one of us has it done first.
So we got a couple of minutes left. We actually ended up going longer. So Dave Aykroyd in the chat room is talking about getting rid of time zones. Not fodder for the podcast, but I've got opinions on that. We should talk about that. Quick thing I wanted to shout out was reading Petri this morning. Microsoft is essentially killing Nano Server.
Oh.
Which was very odd because, like the article says, a couple of years ago, Nano Server was what was going to be the thing. And now they've basically relegated it to being the platform that Containers works on and nothing else. And they've stripped everything. They're going to strip everything else out. So that's kind of weird.
Yeah, well, I think the article talked about one of the challenges. I'm guessing Nano Server's usage is really, really low, right?
Yeah.
but that's probably a product of the fact that Windows Server 2016 usage is still really, really low. So, it was probably a math problem more than anything else. If Nano Server had been selling like hotcakes, and they would have probably embraced it a little more. But since it's not going anywhere, they need it really for the container stuff anyway. Might as well just focus it over there and be like, oops, we missed.
Yeah, so having worked at a software company and having worked with Microsoft for all these years, I feel like it is a combination of two things. Number one, for things that go into Windows, for a group to justify further development on it, they have to prove that it sells copies of Windows. And Nano Server being Nano Server probably wasn't doing that, so that's number one. And then number two, anything that the product does, they have to test within an inch of its life. And so Nano Server being there, even if they don't improve it, it just, by nature of it just being there, they have to continue to test it, which means they can't do other stuff. And so essentially what they did was the pieces of Nano Server that they need for containers, they kept, but they stripped all the stuff out that made Nano Server work with hardware. So less things to test, but yeah, it's not going to sell them copies of Windows. They don't want to test it. Off it goes.
It's hard to blame them, right? I mean, money has to come from somewhere, and so.
Yeah. Then you've got a thing about PowerShell 6. Talk about that.
Yeah, PowerShell 6 Beta 3 came out last week, so I keep meaning to do just a video on that and kind of get people primed for it. But yeah, should be exciting for the world. PowerShell's always getting more awesome, more cooler, so just be one more for when people be like, hey, I'm still running PowerShell 2. Why doesn't this thing work for me? Well, there's your first hint.
Maybe they're still rocking SharePoint 2010. That's so are there any cool things in PowerShell version 6 that jump out at you?
Nothing jumps out at me. I don't know. I haven't played with it, quite frankly. I mean, I've read up on it a little bit, but I haven't put fingers to the keyboard because this, beta. I have enough hard time with the standard stuff. So I don't know. What about you? Have you messed with it at all?
I haven't. So so I don't know if it was that beta when it came out or a different beta, but one of them had something in it that I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be really cool. And then I traveled the world and forgotten what it was. Let me bring that article up.
Yeah, the article I got linked doesn't have the features either, so we might be getting distracted on something that we don't have the answers to.
But check it out. It's a GitHub thing. Put it on a test machine somewhere. And lastly, you've got a thing in here about NIST password recommendations.
Yeah. So the NIST group, right? The government, they kind of set it's a compliance standard, right? And they kind of set the benchmark, if you think about it, for which people should be doing with their software passwords and things like that, and a bunch of other stuff. And so they just put out a new set of releases there. And with that, I think it was interesting because they're trying to embrace. They're being very practical, which is not always a government thing, right?
That almost never happens,
Yeah, they're like, hey, to be NIST compliant, you've got to allow cut and paste. I mean, remember back a few years ago, it was cut and paste was a non-compliance thing.
Very bad thing, yeah.
Yeah, don't force people to have special characters because in reality, we're finding out that passphrases, right? This is a really long password with a period at the end is actually a much better password than crickets and noise sounding little clicks and bangs and all that stuff. So I don't know. I thought it was kind of neat that they really did take a practical approach to it. It wasn't just a bunch of poppycock academic stuff that could never actually be taken care of.
Yeah, and I think so. Number one, when I first saw this, it reminded me of the XKCD skit about or comic about passwords, about how how computers work and all this, and how what was it, the correct horse battery staple should be your password for everything. And I switched to this a long time ago, passphrases as opposed to passwords, because it helps me remember what the passwords for things. But then you've got places that force you to have numbers, which stink, or don't allow you to have spaces or whatever. So I think the password requiring industry needs to get on board with all that. But I think NIST is correct. The other thing I thought that was interesting was they did not recommend frequent password changes. Like I think they said it shouldn't be any more often than 6 months or something like that, which I agree with. The more you get a good long password that takes a long time to break, and then let it sit for a while.
Yeah, I mean, right? Because we've got the very well publicized. I think we talked about several times, right? My "I hate Todd" was a great password of mine for a really long time. And it's simple to remember, simple to type, but would take forever to break because it was just big.
Yep. Yeah, and like I've said before, I can confirm that was his password because I definitely used it to log in as him on multiple occasions on multiple platforms.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I was watching Silicon Valley. I was trying to get caught up on that, where he was hacking the refrigerator, right? And he fired up his mega server, and he's like,
Anton, yep.
Anton, yeah, you can crack this puppy. It took all night. I had to turn all the power off in the place, but thought it was kind of funny, right? Because they were, the fridge needed to be hacked, and he went and hacked the fridge, and it's like, because once again, we like to talk about the fact that none of that stuff can really happen, but you can. He did it. It was on TV. It must be true.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was behind in Silicon Valley, and I watched that very episode yesterday. That's where I was. And for those of you that don't watch Silicon Valley, it's like Big Bang Theory, only on HBO, and has things that HBO can allow. But just a great, God, it's funny. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, and that one's also, being in the startup space as much as, I've been dabbling here in the last couple of years. I mean, everything you see on there, it's true. It all happens. There's nothing fake. There's nothing outlandish. It's all true.
Yeah. It hits awfully close to home a lot.
Yeah. Nicola, right? So my wife is, she's currently the VP of operations for a startup here in town, and she can't watch the show anymore, right? I mean, so it induces stress in her. She can't see the fun in it because she's like, I'm dealing with that myself. So it's interesting.
Yeah, but hysterical. Oh my God, is it funny? All right, so let's take a couple minutes to talk about me and all the places I'm going to go. So July 11th, the St. Louis SharePoint user group is allowing me to speak with them. Shane was kind of my warm-up act a couple of months ago, and I'm going to be there July 11th. And since Shane, they would not do this for Shane, for reasons that will become obvious in a minute, but they have decided that they will allow people to watch it remotely now. So you don't have to be there in person to watch it, and so you can go to their website and sign up for that. And I'll put the link in the show notes, and you can read that. But I'm going to be talking about OneDrive and what OneDrive is, and how you can handle OneDrive, and all these kind of things. And so I'm looking forward to that. At the Engage conference last week, I got to meet Hans Brender, who is like Mr. OneDrive over in Europe. He's got the OneDrive client lists website and all that. So he and I giggled like schoolgirls about how great OneDrive was.
Oh, God, I'm glad I missed that.
So that was good. So that's July 11th, St. Louis SharePoint User Group. And then September 6th, I'm going to be in Stockholm for the SharePoint Exchange Forum. That's Joran Huseman's big gala that he throws every year. We're taking a cruise this year, going over to Tallinn and coming back to Stockholm. I'm not sure which topics I'm going to talk about yet. I had some emails about that this morning. We're going to be doing that. And then a couple weeks later, Microsoft Ignite, September 25th through the 29th. Everybody's going to be there. So should be a good time as well. And then I got another one coming up that I need to put in here, but I need to get that figured out. But busy fall.
Yeah, we need to get confirmed up for the next SP TechCon, right? That's on our to-do list.
Yes, that is immediately after one in November that I haven't put up here. So I need to figure out if I can physically be in all the places I need to be in the times that I need to be there.
You're so fancy. All right, it's way late. Let's tell these people.
Get out of here. Go get you some Chick-fil-A. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. And I promise to get these all produced, and we'll get them out the door as quick as I can.
See ya.
See ya. Bye. Have a good week.